Welcome to History Tape number 79. It happened in Grand Prairie as we're taping this on October the 17th, 1988. We have a very exciting couple to bring to you today that have lived in Grand Prairie for quite a number of years, have been very important to our community, and we're delighted to welcome Mr. and Mrs. Olin Mathis. Welcome, Mathises.
Thank you.
We're just so glad to have you all with us. You have been longtime residents of Grand Prairie, and you still are, and that's the important thing, that we can bring you back and talk about the things that have happened in the past and bring us up to date on the Mathises. And let's put Olin on the hot seat first. You want to do that, Maybeth?
Yeah.
All right. Maybeth Mathis, you are very wonderful and in your own right, but let's get to Olin. Olin Mathis, to start our genealogy record off correctly, we'd like for you to tell us the name of your mother and father, including your mother's maiden name, and give us that for the record, and name any of your brothers and sisters that you'd like to have in this record. All right? And look right out into your camera and tell us that.
Well, my father's name was Walter Mathis. My mother's name was Ola Reed Mathis.
All right.
And I have two brothers, rather. John Quay and Joe Reed Mathis.
Are either one of those, both of them living?
No, John Quay is not living.
All right.
Joe Reed is. He lives in Gilmer.
In Gilbert, Texas?
Gilmer,
Texas.
East
That's
Texas.
down in East Texas, right?
Right.
Oh, that is good. All right.
In fact, that's where I was raised, in East Texas.
All right, where were you born?
Pritchett, Texas.
Pritchett, Texas.
Just
Now,
well advertising. Nobody knows where
well,
it is.
that is near Gilmer, and my grandparents used to live at Pritchett, Texas, and worked a farm out near Pritchett, so that is a good
So
part.
you know where Pritchett is, don't you?
You bet. All right, now, you were born in Pritchett, Texas, and you want to tell us the magic year?
1908.
1908, that was a good year, wasn't it? And when you were born in Pritchett, what did your mother and father do for a living in and around Pritchett?
My father was a mail carrier.
Your father was a mail carrier.
Yeah, and my mother was a school teacher.
All right.
But she passed away when I was only a week old.
All right. But having been a school teacher married to a mailman, during that time, that was quite an exciting couple, because during those times to have both the mother and father working but not on a farm was unusual, wasn't it?
A little bit.
Yes, it was. All right. You want to tell us a little bit about growing up down around Pritchett and where you went after you left Pritchett, Texas, would you, Olin?
Well, I just grew up, you might say, just like any country boy in the country.
All right.
And I played back out and all that on the creek, jumped the creek or whatever, and climbed trees and swung on the grapevine and whatever.
All right. Where'd you go to school?
Went to school in Pritchett,
All right.
Pritchett High School.
And went to Pritchett High School.
And of course, there's not one there anymore, but
All
it
right.
was then. And
After you left Pritchett, where did you go after Pritchett?
oh well, I left Pritchett first to go to work in the wheat harvest in West Texas.
All
first,
right.
And I stopped on the way back home in Abilene and took a job in a wholesale grocery house.
All right.
And there I stayed for 17 years.
Oh, that was wonderful. And working the wheat harvest wasn't easy, was it?
No, it wasn't
That's
easy.
pretty tough work. All right. You've gotten us along the way where you're in Abilene, but let's leave you for a few minutes and catch up with Maybeth, so we're going to find out how she's coming along. And Maybeth, start out with telling us about your folks.
Well, my people were Irish.
Okay.
My daddy was an Irishman and my mother was Irish. And my daddy was in the Galveston flood.
I see.
And his daddy was a bridge constructor
Engineer. Oh, he was.
And he had teams of mules that they were working over on Galveston Island. And when the storm hit, he sent my daddy back for the last time the little railroad ran over there to get the mules out before the storm hit. And my daddy got back, and the storm was so bad that he crawled up in the top of a depot and went to sleep that night. And the next morning, he said when he woke up, he was up on a stack of baggage, and there was just bodies floating around him, people that had perished in the flood.
Terrible hurricane, the flood of the hurricane. All right. Let's get your mother and father's name into this record so we'll know who we're talking about here. Who was your dad?
He went by Tom Riddell.
Tom Riddell.
Yeah, he went by Tom Riddell, and mother was Adelaide.
All right. Adelaide, what was her maiden name?
Adelaide Carr.
All right. Now, your dad, when he grew up around the Galveston area where his father was into a bridge construction engineer. Now, what did your daddy do as he grew up?
Well, when Daddy grew up, they brought a lot of lumber from the Galveston flood up to Alida, up to Buffalo Gap.
All right.
And the Grandpa, his father, Grandpa built a big two-story house there, and that house is in the Memorial Park there at Aledo now. They've made a...
That your great-great-grandfather built?
No, my great-grandfather.
Your great-grandfather
Yeah.
built?
Uh-huh.
How wonderful.
And it's called the Riddell House, I believe it is. It's a gingerbread affair down there.
Mm-hmm.
But they have all the antiques and everything.
The memorabilia all inside that house?
And out down
And
there.
that is from your Riddell side of your family?
Yes, and we have pictures of when grandmother wanted the newspaper to come out and make a picture of it. She had my daddy and 8 daughters, and she set some daughters in chairs on the front porch in their little starch dresses, and she stood some out beside the house by bushes, and she stood out in the front yard where she could be seen. And my daddy, he was standing out in the front yard, not by a bush, but standing out in the front yard.
And he was the only son with 8 sisters.
8 sisters.
What an exciting thing. All right, and your dad grew up around Buffalo Gap, which is out near Abilene?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And my daddy was a rancher. He loved livestock, and his daddy sent him to A&M College.
All right.
And there's where he learned to take show cattle
To the county fair.
Chicago, and all up in there where they showed so many cattle.
All right. Now, when your daddy grew up in that area and married your mom, where did they get married?
Aledo, Texas, I believe.
Aledo. Well, wonderful.
Right there in Aledo.
All right. And had how many children other than Maybeth?
Oh, they had 5 children.
All right. Would you like to name your brothers and sisters?
Oh, let me see.
I know you can name 1 or 2 of them.
They had me, and that should have been discouraging.
All right. And what was your magic birthday? Can you tell us that?
June 1.
June 1, and you're going to tell us the magic year?
08.
1908.
08.
All right. Right together. Okay.
And then I have a sister that's 3 years younger than I. That's Onita. And then I have a brother that's was 2 years younger than Onita. That's Ralph.
All right.
And then I had a sister that was a little younger than Ralph, 18 months younger than Ralph.
All right.
That's Margaret. And then way later, along came Brother Teb.
Now, I see. That's great. All right. Now, you have a very famous Riddell family with the house out in West Texas.
Yeah.
That's a but you also have a very special heritage in the car part of your
Yeah,
family.
yeah.
Tell us about the car connection, will you?
Well, my grandmother Carr was in Tennessee. She was Betty Cummins.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we have a famous Cummins in our commentators in the East now.
All
She was
right.
Betty Cummins, and they came to Weatherford in the covered wagon.
All right.
And my grandmother was a very, very pioneer woman. I could write books about what Grandmother Carr did.
Oh, wonderful.
Just she was very brave and
And she came from what part of the country?
in Tennessee.
In Tennessee.
I don't know what part, but she and Sam Houston were cousins in Tennessee.
Our Sam Houston of Texas?
Yes, our Sam Houston.
How
of
famous you're
Texas.
getting, Maybeth Massis. Wonderful. Well, that's great. Well, now, when your mother and father married and had all of these wonderful 5 children, where did you go to school?
Well, Daddy always saw the pastures were a little greener on the other side of the fence.
All right.
So he moved from Texas over into New Mexico and back to Texas again. But most of my education was in Kenyon, Texas.
Canyon, Texas. Out near where the wonderful college is in
West
Canyon.
Texas State Teachers College.
You bet. All right, now we've gotten you. What schools did you attend, 1 or 2 or whatever?
Mostly in Kenyon.
Mostly in Canyon, Texas.
And then I finished school in Abilene.
In
Abilene High School.
All right. So, what brought you to Abilene? Did your folks live there also?
Yes, Daddy moved all of us to Abilene because he was traveling with Auto Parts Company at that time. He had been tax assessor in Canyon and county clerk in Canyon for a long, long time. And he decided to take this office, and we moved to Abilene
All right.
in 1926, and I graduated from high school in 27.
All right. Now, we've gotten Olin out of school, and now we've gotten you out of school. How did you two meet by any chance?
Blind date.
On a blind date. How exciting.
Oh, sure, we didn't leave anything out.
All right. Now tell us about the blind date. Was it a friend of Olin's or a friend of yours that arranged this
Oh,
introduction?
it was a friend of mine. I worked with her downtown Abilene, and
What were you doing for a living then?
well, I worked at a department store.
All right. All right. And she was a friend in the department store.
Yeah.
And she says, I have this friend.
Yeah, she was going to go with his friend, and so he came along with his friend from me.
For me.
And I
Okay.
took one look at him, and I thought, oh, I'm so glad it wasn't the other guy. This is the one I wanted in the first place.
Oh, how wonderful. You were already hooked, Olin, and you didn't even know
I
it.
didn't know it. Didn't
All
realize it.
right. All right. What were you doing in Abilene then?
I was,
In
by
the-
that time, working at this wholesale grocery house,
All right.
traveling for them on the road.
All right. And you traveled how far from Abilene
Well,
around?
just in the adjoining counties and cities around Abilene, Tuscola, Old Valley, Lawn, and just areas north and south.
And you
like
learned
that.
a lot about marketing in the grocery business
Yeah,
then,
a little
didn't you?
bit.
All right. And did you continue on working after you two married?
Not too much.
All right. Then you stayed home and started raising a wonderful family, and
Yeah.
you just must name all of your wonderful 3 girls that have gone to Grand Prairie schools that caused you to get in the PTA and many other things. Name those precious darlings.
Oh, Betty Evelyn, and Nancy Jean, and Mary Frances.
All right. Now let's start with Betty. Where is Betty these days?
She's in Gainesville, Texas.
And what is her name now?
She's Betty Evelyn Alsop.
Wonderful. All right. Does she have any children?
She has 2 boys.
Would you name them? That's grandkids.
There's Scott and Olin Lloyd.
How wonderful.
Robert Scott and Olin Lloyd.
All right, let's go to Nancy and tell us about Nancy and where she is and her name now.
We're getting way into a lot of people.
I know we're getting into a mess, aren't we? All right, but you can go for it. You can do it.
Nancy married a local boy from Grand Prairie, the Tarrant,
Uh-huh.
out of the Tarrant family.
All right.
And she married Jim Tarrant, and they moved to Atlanta, Georgia. And Jim has been there and just now retiring from Polaroid Corporation.
All right.
And
Do they have any
they
children?
have 3 children,
All right.
Teresa, Laura Jean, and Cal.
Oh, that's wonderful. Now we have 5 grandchildren we've been able to mention. Now, how about Mary?
Mary lives in Plano.
All right. Is she married?
She's married. She married Stanley Lee from Enterprise, Alabama.
All right. Do
And they have 3 children. They have Stacy and Ryan and Jody.
All right. Now that makes about 8
8.
grandchildren.
8 grandchildren, yeah.
If I can calculate, about
Yeah,
8.
yeah.
You know, that's a whole lot of Christmas presents and birthday presents and all the good
We
things.
just
isn't
send
it?
them one check and say, forget the shopping.
They're divided up.
All right. We're going to let you rest for a minute and come back and talk with you in a little bit, maybe, Beth, about some of the things that you did in Grand Prairie, Texas while the girls were growing up and some of
Yeah.
the contributions you've made. But, Olin,
Yeah.
what brought you to Grand Prairie, Texas in 1943, young man?
Try to make a living.
All right, first of all, we needed to make a living, and you were in grocery out in Abilene, so what brought you here?
Well, to bring it right on down to that time, her father and family moved down here. They were looking for a job at that time. You know, it was a little scarce on there about that time.
Right.
And he found a job running a dairy out here in the west part of Fort Worth.
Oh, good.
And I lost my job in the wholesale house in 31, I guess it was. That's you don't remember anything about that, of course. But the Big
Bet I
Depression,
remember it.
Big Depression, and all.
Remember
But
it.
anyway, I was released from the job I had there on account of business and the lack of business, and so. Her dad called me and said he needed some help run this dairy. So Beth and I got in the car and took off down here to help him. We worked out there a little while, and I decided my idea was if I got down to Fort Worth, I'd have a chance to get back in the grocery business somewhere.
Yes.
And so that dairy job didn't work out very long. I told him one day, I said, we work day and night here in this business, and I'm not going to have a chance to get in the grocery business if I stay here and work this.
You bet.
And so we decided to just take up and move to Handley, where his sister lived.
All right.
And I don't know whether this is interesting to you or not, but we found a house to rent for $10 a month for the whole family, her family and all the children. And I
In Handley,
in that
Texas.
one house in Handley.
What else? $10 a month.
That was a blessing, wasn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
And so on the way to this house, when we moved down, I stopped off at Leonard Brothers in Fort Worth and applied for a job and eventually got it, a regular job with them. I had to work a couple of 3 weekends before I got in regular, but that's where I started. And they had a wholesale house, and I was eventually sent down to that. That is what I'd trained for before, for 4.5, 5 years.
All right.
And that eventually brought me to Grand Prairie. We lived in Handley at the time, and that brought me to Grand Prairie because I was working out of this wholesale house of Leonard's in Fort Worth, and I was traveling, calling on the stores in Grand Prairie.
Wonderful.
Calling on C.R. Sargent, the Sargent's Cash Grocery,
All right.
for 2 or 3 years, and he kept trying to get me to go to work for him, and eventually did, and that's where I got in the retail grocery business.
All right. So your first retail job in the grocery was with C.R. Sargent. Where was that located? On Main Street?
On Main Street, right next to Miller Drug.
All right. East or west of Miller Drug? A little west?
West, just
little west of
yeah.
Miller
the
Drive.
first store west of Miller Drive.
Oh, that is wonderful. How long did you work with Mr. C.R. Sargent?
Well, I worked 8 years for him, and then bought the store from him, and
All right.
moved him up on 14th and West Main Street in Grand Prairie.
All right. And how long did you operate the Mathis Grocery on 14th and West Main?
19 more years.
19
30
more
years altogether with Sargent and that.
in that. And that's wonderful. And you've seen many wonderful Grand Prairians and probably some bad ones come and go that left owing you money and all the good stuff.
Let's don't mention any of
We
those
don't,
bad ones.
we don't talk about that on television, do we?
I don't do that.
Don't do it again.
Things worked out good, we'll say that anyway.
Well, having had the experience with working with someone like Mr. C.R. Sargent, I know was exciting. Tell us a little bit about your association with him. Since his family, we don't have a historical interview with any of his family yet, we'd like to have something about Mr. C.R. Sargent, if you know about him. What kind of a businessman was he?
Well, he was a good businessman. He
All
was
right.
good to me. There's, of course, you know, like any of us, there's people that, anybody in business will have people criticizing you or something about you,
Yes.
about the business or something. But anyway, Mr. Sargent was a real businessman, and he believed in treating everybody right, and he treated me right, and all that.
All right, and when you moved into the Grand Prairie area, you were living in Hanley. Where did you move to into Grand Prairie, Texas first?
Down on Willow Street.
On Willow Street.
Yeah.
Oh, good. That is good. And then from Willow Street,
Stayed
where
there
did you?
for 3 or 4 years
my
after
God.
his powers, and moved from there to where we live now on 7th and College.
All right, that is wonderful. All right, Maybeth, we're going to let him rest. You've just got to tell some good stuff that happened to you raising all 3 of these wonderful girls.
Oh,
What were you into? PTA, church, Sunday school, any kind
Yeah.
of clubs or anything else? Look out and tell us about Maybeth.
well, of course, first, with the age of the children, I was in PTA.
All right.
And
Were you
then-
ever a PTA president?
Well, yes, 3 or 4 times. I've lost
3
count.
or 4
I've
times.
lost count. I've lost count. In council and the regular meetings, really, Ruthie, I don't remember.
Oh,
how
that's,
many.
but you were in the city council of PTAs and the
Yeah.
high school PTA and all
yeah,
of the others
high
up
school,
in
yeah.
Austin PTA and
Yeah.
up and down the line. All right, what else did you do to bide your time while he was down at the grocery store doing all the hard work? Did you
Oh.
have any hobbies or any clubs or anything
Yeah,
else?
mostly artwork.
Mostly artwork,
Uh-huh.
okay.
And China painting.
And China painting. So I know that you're an artist in China painting because you've painted a couple of wonderful things for me. Not only a couple, I can only say that much on television because that's all Mr. Jackson knows about. But you do a beautiful job. Tell us where you learned to China paint.
Well, I just liked it, and in the ceramic craze, I began to paint, do delicate painting, little figurines' hands. I just loved the way, the delicacy of them, and the little flowers and things that you saw on little dresser sets and violets and things like that. And I got into it that way, and I took most of my lessons and from 3 different teachers in Dallas and 2 in Fort Worth.
Wonderful. All right, then when you became an artist in your own right and could do China painting, did you ever have classes? Did you ever teach others?
Just a few.
Just a few. I thought maybe you might want to
For
talk
many
about
a
that.
year.
For many years you taught
Since
others
'53.
taught others to China paint and
Since
do
1953.
that beautiful artwork. It's magnificent,
Thank you.
some of the things that you've done. All right, let's let you rest for a minute. We have about 4 more minutes, and we got to get to Olin a little bit because I know that you all have been involved. Have you been in any of the clubs, Olin?
I'm on the Lions Club for, I believe it was 29 years.
29 years as a Lion. That's the
Let's see.
host Lions?
Let's see, it's from 44 to 73.
Oh, that is a
29,
good
that's
Were you
what it
ever
was.
the president of the Lions Club?
No.
No, he didn't want that responsibility.
He didn't want to have the nursery
I
stuff.
didn't have time.
All right. Now, tell me what else activities you had. I know that you were involved in your church and that you were an important official in the church. Tell us the church you go to, and did you ever teach any classes?
Well, I belong to Church of Christ, and I was a treasurer for 30 years.
That's a bunch.
30 years.
Treasurer for 30 years, and is that the 4th and Church Street, and then the old
That 4th and Church in the present location.
Tarrant Road, and,
Tarrant Road.
and then Turnpike? Okay. And didn't you also serve as a deacon too?
Yes, deacon for
Well, that's wonderful to have someone that'll give that much.
20,
Yeah.
20, 30 years, I don't know.
About 30 years.
All right. Maybeth, or were you ever involved in teaching class, Sunday school, or any of this?
Yes, but quite a long time ago.
Quite a long time ago.
Yeah.
All right. Do you belong to any clubs, any study clubs, or does your artwork and everything take most of your
Well,
time?
I used to belong to the 20th Century Study Club, and I think that was about all. And then I belonged to the Porcelain Art Guild in Dallas for a long time.
Oh, that is wonderful.
But I don't anymore.
Okay. Olin, in the few minutes that we have left, is there anything you would like to say about the growth of Grand Prairie during the time that you have seen it? When you started downtown on Main Street and the small number of people that were in Grand Prairie and how you've seen it grow, and name some of the important people that have had an influence in the city back in the past that you remember that maybe helped you in business other than Mr. Sargent?
Well, that's hard to bring that to mind too much on the different people. There's been a lot of them. And of course, Mr. Turner was the head of the bank here then.
All right.
Knew him well, and it was helped me at times. And I just hesitate to name one because there's so many of them.
All right.
But
And the Vernon
I
Jacksons.
had lots of help along the way,
All
lots of
right.
friends, and
Well, Lee Middle School, which was Lee Junior High, or the first Grand Prairie Junior High, is celebrating their 40th anniversary this week. Did you ever have kids over in Lee? You didn't have kids in Lee.
No.
All of yours were on the other side of the tracks,
Oh,
weren't
yeah.
they?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
All right. Would you like to say in the 1 minute we have left, Maybeth, how great it's been living in Grand Prairie? Look right out and tell everyone how neat
Well,
you think it is.
It's just home to us. We, when we first came here, we knew that we'd probably live out the rest of our lives here because it is a wonderful place and wonderful neighborhood, and we get to know and see a lot of people because we help hold elections, and we have lots and lots of friends that come in, and maybe we get to see them just once a year.
And your precinct is number 44?
4408.
4408,
Yeah.
and you've been that for how long?
Oh, I don't know.
40 years.
No, for about 10, 15.
we've just helped hold elections.
We hope to help hold the
hold
city,
years.
well, it's the city elections that we help now.
Well, I want to thank y'all for being with us and talking about the Mathises. And this is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live and do. Thank y'all for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.